I want to talk about TaRiq Bracy because TaRiq Bracy is in a unique situation going into his senior year. And we all saw it, unfortunately for him, play out on national television. 'Cause we know the talent that he has. We've seen it on display. I mean, and in big games too. I mean, we've seen what he can do, but he just appeared to lose his confidence last year. And thankfully, Clarence Lewis was there, and he was able to kind of take over as a true freshman. But both of those guys play the same position, which is very interesting as well. What do you see from TaRiq Bracy moving into his senior year? I mean, we're not obviously behind the scenes. We're not in the room with him. Do you see an avenue for TaRiq Bracy to find his way back on the field?
First of all, Vince, they play the same position for now. You're correct in your statement. I'm not
right. And I was
contradicting it. I'm simply saying that you're not going to move Clarence Lewis to boundary because there's no way you can go with TaRiq Bracy as the guy at field corner right now. Not because he struggled, but because of why he struggled.
Yeah.
We've seen TaRiq Bracy talk about his talent. We've seen some up and downs from him throughout his career. I mean, he was, as a true freshman, great against Florida State, great against Pitt, struggled a little bit against USC, bounces back. Then you look in 2019, he's phenomenal against Georgia, 2 pass breakups. He had other big games that year, and then he just gets torched against Virginia. So we've seen that up and down from him in the past, and this year as well. I mean, go watch the Duke game. He was excellent against Duke. There were plenty of times this year where he played good football, but there was just too many times where he looked lost. I mean, he's reaching out and grabbing guys against North Carolina. When you see guys get turned and then reach and grab, that's a guy with no confidence.
Yeah.
Because he knows I'm beat and he's just trying to reach and grab.
Yep.
And so you saw that when he was getting beat in those games. He was getting beat by receivers that aren't as good as guys he's blanketed in the past. And he was getting beat on routes that, like, he's better than that. And so there was just there was no trust in his technique. There was no trust in himself, his athleticism. And you can't go into spring with a guy like that, number one. He's got to earn that trust back. Now, there are things you do to try to get him to get that confidence back. But at the end of the day, confidence is something that you can't – there's no drill for that, right?
No, there's not.
There's nothing like, okay, today is confidence-boosting drill. There are confidence-boosting, like, things you'll do in practice. There's days where I would go into practice and say nothing that my guys are going to do today is going to be correct.
Sure.
Because it's that mental game of I just want to keep them honest. And then there's those days where, like, I've torn them down for the last couple of days. Today's going to be super, like, hey, let's go. Let's, teaching and lots of instruction and lots of encouragement and pats on the back and things like that. That's all part of that mental game of really building up the right psyche amongst your football team. And so there are things
you can. Worth his salt is good at everything that you just did.
Right.
Everything
Lou
that you
Holtz
just
was
said.
a master at that.
Yes,
I mean, he was an absolute master at that. And where do you think I learned it from? It was, being a Notre Dame fan, but then also spending time around Urban Meyer when he was at Bowling Green. And where did he learn it from?
Right.
Lou Holtz.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, I think when you look at TaRiq Bracy, he's just the biggest wild card that you have, because if he can regain his confidence, you have a guy that's extremely athletic, a guy that has great feet, a guy that has really good speed, a guy that has usually really good instincts and coverage, who's surprisingly physical for a little guy. He was, to me, Notre Dame's hardest hitter at cornerback last year. I mean, when you talk about a guy that came up and hit, go look early in the year and watch some of the sticks he's laying on people, coming up and playing, screen game and quick game. So he's got all the tools except for great height. But just like you said, that the consistency's always been an issue. And this is a year for him where if he can bounce back, then you now have a guy that can do multiple things. Number one, if the other boundary corners don't step up, you have a guy that you could step into the field position and you could move Clarence Lewis to the boundary. Number one. And if you're going into a game where, let's say your boundary, Clarence isn't your boundary, but you're going into a game where you're going to play left to right because you're playing a tempo team. Sure. And Notre Dame is so Notre Dame is going to be that. We'll explain it here after this. Then maybe you could start Clarence Lewis and TaRiq Bracy together. Clarence and Lewis.
It sounds like an old vaudeville actor.
I know, right? Didn't they travel west? Oh no, that's Lewis and Clark. But you could start them together in some of those games.
Absolutely.
And so you have some flexibility there. You could put TaRiq in the slot. If you're playing a team that's got a really athletic slot, you could put him in the slot. If you're playing a team that's got a bigger slot, maybe Clarence Lewis could move inside there, or maybe Clarence Lewis could move to the boundary and you could put Cam. I mean, TaRiq Bracy stepping up gives you a
Options.
Pure cover corner.
Yeah.
And he is really the best pure cover corner that they have from a speed standpoint, especially amongst the returners. And so him stepping up gives you that matchup guy for a coach who wants to run a lot of cover one. Cover one is man across the board, except for the free safety. What it means, like one safety deep. That's it. Everybody else is in man coverage.
Right.
And not everybody calls it cover one, but that's the general term for it. So that to me is a key. They need to invest time in him and get help trying to get that confidence back. Having said that, if he doesn't have it back by the end of spring, you have to, as a coaching staff, go into the offseason saying we're not going to have TaRiq mentally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now that doesn't mean you give up on him. You still coach him up, but you
have to have a game plan.
Yeah, you have to, and I think they will, and so how he develops is going to have a big impact on the rest of the group. And again, the good news is because of the depth chart, the young talent, they don't need him necessarily to where if he doesn't step up, they're screwed. Which is kind of if Clarence Lewis would have got hurt this year, or if Nick McLeod would have got hurt this year, they'd have been in big trouble. I don't view them as having that thin of a margin for error in 2021, even if a guy like Bracy struggles. But even then, even if he steps up and plays well, you're always going to have that backup plan in the back of your mind as a coach. That is this the game that he loses it. That's always going to be a concern.
Sure.
So you're always going to have that backup plan. But he's going to have to, day after day after day, go out and prove that he's past that and he's the guy that he's capable of being.